And I have been up late. If you can tell what this is by the little winglets and the shape of the wing, it is not an F-86, but it is close. Nope, this is going to be a Viper jet. Now I've put it on this so that you guys can actually see it, but I got the profile really close. This is going to be another one where when you see it, it really does look like the projected jet. Now, I still have my F-86 to do. In fact, I'm going to do the F-86 out of this material right here. So I have what I need to do it. I'm just in no rush. I already have the P-51. It flies very similar. And I suspect those two will be pretty much the same. This one has a chance to be very different in flight characteristics. It's a similar wing to the F-86, but really, if you look closely at the F-86 and the Mustang wing, they're similar. One's just a little more raked back than the other. And this is kind of a jet I've had a hankering to do for a while, because with these little winglets, it actually helps and handles really well. In addition, it has a nice sleek tail configuration traditionally, and these are the correct pieces for this bird. If you look it up, I've done a good job here. These are actually really nice. It took me hours to make these, but this was the lid off of this. It's why I liked it. This stuff, okay, I'm going to cover something here. The plastics that I use are very particular. Watch this real close. You bend this plastic enough, see that? It gets cloudy, and watch that, it disappears. Isn't that cool? So if I bend it enough, it'll get cloudy and stay that way, which is a bummer. You make it crease, you fold it like origami, and you get that. I was thinking about maybe folding a canopy for this, but I've decided not to. Then there's stuff like this. And I was working with it, and it's cheap dollar store stuff, and it cracks really bad. And you'll be working with it 1 minute, and it's working perfectly, and then bang, it cracks. So I was going to build a Saab Draken, Viggen, Draken, whatever. It's a Draken, technically. And that didn't work out because the pieces wouldn't fold right. There were areas where it just wasn't right, and then it started cracking, and it was really brittle and stuff. So maybe I just got a bad quality sheet. But it happened repeatedly on this sheet. Every time I tried to bend it, it broke rather than cut. And that was a very disappointing thing. So I gave up working with that material, and I've gone back to more reliable materials. Now, I just wanted to show you real quick the next project. This is the most important part whenever you guys do a build. I mean, we're talking about a carbon stick flying machine, which means these are the important pieces. You're better off spending your time working on your control surfaces. I mean, take a good look at my P-51, and you'll see the same. It's got exactly the right profile for a P-51. The wing is the right shape. It's got the little lead-ons. That's really important if you want it to look right in the air and fly right. I mean, don't forget, you're going to fly it, and unless you want them all to fly the same, you don't really want the same wing all the time. So when I looked at building the F-86, and I looked at building this, they're almost an identical wing, guys. They're almost an identical wing. The difference is the F-86 has a big hole in the nose and a big round body, which is really hard for me to replicate here with a stick. However, this pen lid happens to look a lot like the nose of the type of jet that I want to make. And so once this is actually on the tip, it actually will look pretty much like the jet that I want it to when you think about it. It already looks right. So this is a big part of it. So now that I have all the control surfaces and the wing, I basically have this aircraft, and I could throw the whole thing together in half an hour now that I have this part of it. But this part of it took me a couple hours to get exactly the shape I wanted to make it perfectly symmetrical, to do the whole thing. So, as always at this point, you guys have already gotten a pretty good indication of what the glue will weigh and all that stuff. So what I want to do now is I'm just going to do what I did before. I'm going to take the wing, and I'm going to put the wing up I can already tell this one's lighter. I mean, the other material, with this material, the other wing was 8 grams. Don't forget, one sheet of this stuff is 9 grams. And look at that. I've got all of the bodywork for this plane on, and it's only 4.3 grams. Out of this stuff, I could make a ship that is a lot less. So I'm just going to prove that once again. We're going to take that sheet. We're going to put it on. I can't prove it. It's like I can only hold it there, and you can see what I mean. It's just around 9 grams, guys. So, given that being the case, this is a much, much better arrangement because in a way, it's a lot lighter. So I'm going to show you some other brief things because we are kind of showing you basically an archetype, hoping that you could pretty much reproduce it without too much trouble, guys. I mean, the fact is, you really could. It's not that hard to do. They're designed like this for a reason. Now, I did not copy a pattern. I made my own. And that is nowhere near as hard as you might think to do. It's just time consuming. You got to look and make sure you get the proportions right. And even if you don't have them perfect, that's fine. It just changes the amount of control you have. And in this case, I'll have plenty of control, nice ailerons, nice elevator, and a decent sized rudder. The rudder will be a little small, but it's actually better. Your rudder is less effective on a small jet like this than more effective, which means I generally tend to make my rudder just a little smaller than it should theoretically be for scale's sake. However, it does make the aircraft fly better noticeably, and it makes it easier to fly, especially on an aircraft where you have a fast roll rate. You don't also want a really touchy tail, especially until you get used to the aircraft. So if I find it too insensitive, it's a lot easier to stop it, bring it back, make bigger control surfaces the next time than it is to have it be too sensitive and smash it into a tree. Once that happens, it's pretty much toast. But I really like this archetype. So generally, once you've laid out a really nice pattern, you transfer it over to paper. And then once you have it on paper, I put it in the file kind of a thing. In this case, I don't know if so much I'm going to build this wing set right away, but it's very light. The plastic I'm using here is actually fairly stiff, but not that stiff. It's stiff enough that it'll work, but it's light too. I need a bottom on that. So what we saw for the weight, 4.65, I'm going to have to add right around another 3.5 grams. So it'll come out right about the same as the other wing now that I'm really looking at it. Because I'm going to need another piece this size for the bottom, minus the winglet, and no more tail stuff. So that's going to be probably another, 3 to 3.5 grams or so, 4 grams. And we're looking right around an 8 gram, not just the wing, but for all of the control surface as well. We're looking right around 8 grams. Now, the one other thing I did want to show you was its specifications vaguely. So, I was originally thinking an 8-inch wingspan. You can see this is substantially less than that. Here's the control surfaces. You can see they're really not very big here. We've basically got 1-inch struts and a 1-inch tall tail, as you can see. So, I mean, we're really looking, all these pieces are pretty much 1 inch, and the wing is 7 inches. That's total. So, I mean, if you're looking at each half, like you were going to build that, look at that. From inside to tip, it's just under 4 inches per. Now, I could change this and swivel these out. Isn't that sexy? By making this have a change of rake. So now is where you look really closely at the Viper jet and you realize it's not as slung back as this is showing it. So let's examine this. It's really right about here. So what I would need to do then is knock a little tiny bit off of this angle. Just make it a little bit straighter so that when they come together on the correct angle. So what I like to do is move each one a tiny little bit, and then it shows me what I need to do. and what angle I want it on, and I plan it all out. And then once I have it exactly planned for the angle I want, I make my final trim. But right now, I just gave it a trim that looked reasonable, knowing that I can adjust this angle easily. You just start at the tip and shave a little off, and these two come together more, and you have a lesser angle. Now, the truth is, a Viper Jet sits right about there. It's not as aggressively swept back as, say, an F-86 Sabre. And that's one of the reasons I want to do this type of wing instead of the Sabre wing. I want something a little more laid back to fly. These tend to be very locked in. Not too crazy aggressive, but still very fast. And that is what I'm looking for. So, I will keep you guys updated on this one. Just remember, what's really important is the shape of your wing, the angles here, the width, the tip. And then worry about this when you mount it to the body and figure out the angle and check it and all that stuff. It's easy to do. I mean, right now I'm looking at my fourth plane, and the F-86 is done as far as the wing goes. It actually looks pretty good. It's the same thing as this, though. It's a nice looking wing, very similar to this. And the difference is the F-86 wing will be heavily swept back, whereas this one, and that's even more than an F-86, that's more like a MiG-21 or a MiG-20 whatever, or even an F-14 with its wings swept back. I mean, that's a very swept back position. And generally, an F-86 will be like that. It's a very swept back position. But even now, these two aren't quite that swept back, and I've actually decided that I'm going to go just slightly forward of that. And it really should be right about there to get the sweep just right. It'll be right in that neighborhood. Anyway, I'll show that to you guys in the future. And if I had a protractor, I could just tell you what the degrees are, but I don't. Like I said, I never really measure them. The closest I've gotten is to measuring for you guys. I started it knowing that I wanted a piece about 8 inches, so I measured it out as 8 inches. And by the time I'm done trimming it and adjusting it and fine-tuning it, it always gets smaller. Then I trim out the inside to get the angle that I want, and it gets smaller again. So it's like 7 1/4 right now, which is actually one of my narrowest. Even the P-51 has a bit wider of a... See that? It's noticeably bigger. That's a lot bigger too. I mean, really, it's got a nice overhang over that. So that one will be my sleekest bird yet. And it's likely to be the lightest. And that was kind of the intention. I'm in the middle of making a couple really fast ones that I had kind of envisioned. The P-51 is one of the ones that flies really good as a mid-speed type of guy. This one flies good even faster. So I want to make the 3 or 4, basically 3 as fast as I can. And then I'll start working on slowing things down. I'm putting the F-86 on hold because I got an idea for this sheet that would be really amazing to make something like this, but a stealth fighter. Something a little more laid back, not quite as aggressive as the F-86, more like the P-51 wing. The straighter the wing, the more benign the handling tends to be. The more you lean it back, the more aggressive it is. And since I don't want too crazy a roll rate, I mean, the P-51's already got a crazy roll rate. I don't want it too much crazier than that. This will be crazier than that, and it will be faster, and I got to be careful. That being said, I'm going to end this video here. It's getting really long, guys, but I want you to enjoy your building. Just remember, patience, man. Symmetry, patience, trimming. Don't obsess over size, obsess over perfect angles and perfect symmetry, and you will do well. Keith out.